Hi, I'm Sam, and I'm a history student that's just finished the third year. I will be discussing the project I have completed as part of the work placement module. Unfortunately, I couldn't present it in person, but I'll try my best to explain the project in this video. To explain briefly, I completed my placement hours at the Palestine Exploration Fund, PEF for short, which is an organisation based in Greenwich that originally focused on the study of the Levant and Palestine, but its research now ranges all over the Middle East. I was not sure what to do for my project at first, but after some discussions, it was agreed that it would be a good idea to create an educational video game which is aimed at teaching Key Stage 3 students topics of history that are perhaps difficult to learn about due to large unavailability in school curriculum. These topics being archaeology and Middle Eastern studies. The video game chosen to create my game in was Minecraft, a popular 3D creative free roam game where almost everything is in the form of a block. It is the best selling video game ever, so it is likely that the target audience of Key Stage 3 students would have at least heard of it. The next step was to present the idea to the PEF, who were enthusiastic about the idea and really helpful throughout with their resources and feedback. Luckily for me, they had already heard of Minecraft, but the next step was to choose an area of PEF research to create the project about. The site chosen was Tel Hessi, which is a Palestinian archaeological site located near Gaza. The final project video is a bit too long for this presentation, but I will show some short clips to explain parts of it, as well as photos and illustrations found when I was researching at the PEF. The player starts off in one of the rooms at the PEF, where they talk to a non-player character named Dame Kathleen Kenyon, who was an archaeologist for the PEF and regarded as one of the most influential archaeologists of the 20th century. The player is introduced and can click on a link to find out more about her on the PEF website. Throughout the game, she takes the player on a tour to Tel Hessi, but first the player has a tutorial on what a tell is, which I think is necessary because personally I didn't know what a tell was myself 6 months ago. In short, it is an artificial mound that has been made by humans rather than occurring naturally. As settlements were built and then replaced or crumbled due to weather or something else, new settlements were built on top of the remains, gradually raising the surface level over thousands of years. From there, archaeologists can excavate the mound and investigate the layers or stratas of history by looking at the objects and materials found inside it, thereby working out the chronology of the site. After the tutorial, the player is teleported to Tel Hessi in 1890, where Kathleen Kenyon explains the story of archaeologist Sir Flinders Petrie's expedition and how he went about excavating the pottery. He wrote a book called Tel Hessi (Lachish), which provided helpful details about his expedition, such as why he did not dig down from the top of the tell. This was because the top of the tell was being farmed by the Bedouin, who were nomadic people that largely lived in Middle Eastern deserts. Petrie didn't want to buy out the crops, as he saw potential in the eastern side of Tel Hessi. Because the Wadi Hessi, a river running past the mound, had worn away at the edge of the mound, it had, in Petrie's words, eaten its way further into the soil, undermining the ruins. So instead, his team dug away at the slopes instead of needing to cut out a large chunk of the tell with more destructive techniques. The interactive element is that the player can dig for the pottery themselves with the shovel and pickaxe provided. I provided the options of an easy or difficult mode, with the easy mode spawning red blocks near the areas containing objects that need to be found. Unfortunately, Minecraft was not built for archaeology, so the process is not completely realistic, but it's a start at least. When they find the objects, they can look at the book, which tells them more about what they found, as well as illustrations and archival references so they can see it in person at the PEF archives. I had to improvise with the blocks because there isn't a block for everything, so other things had to be used to present a bowl or a jug and so on. Once they finish this, they click on this lever at the bottom of the mound, which removes a chunk of Tel Hessi, which Kenyon lets them know is because they are now in 1892. Another member of the PEF, called Frederick Jones Bliss, was the man who excavated this part of the site during his 5 seasons expedition, which has become known as Bliss's Cut. The player can then interact with this part of the tale, talking to a non-player character that discusses how families would have worked on the site, as well as a woman called Huda that Bliss briefly wrote about in one of his articles. You can excavate a wall nearby and find a group of weapons called the Hesse Horde, which consist of axe heads, mace heads and spear heads. It is regarded as the best collection of an early Bronze Age copper hoard found, which are on display at the PEF. The book goes on to discuss them in more detail, such as how the hoard resembles weapons found at other sites, such as Kathleen Kenyon's excavations at Jericho, which we can see compared in this illustration from her article. The point that I wanted to make in the final section of the game was that even pioneers like Flinders Petrie and Frederick Jones Bliss did not know everything about Tallahassee, but have paved the way for improved modern technology to discover more about the site. For example, in the past it was assumed that the land around Tallahassee was farmed because it can be farmed today, but this is done now by modern equipment and ploughs that can dig deeper into the soil, which is more effective than ancient techniques. More recent studies have found that the Hesse region is dominated by an uncommon soil type called Rahama Lus that has been formed by wind-blown dust carried from the Sahara Desert to Palestine. Because of this, a lot of the water from rainfall runs off the surface to somewhere else. With it difficult to farm, it meant that people in the past must have survived with other methods. In periods of heavy rainfall, the area was instead a pasturage for animals, which had more uses than just food. Bone tube workshops were found, which used the lower leg bones of cows to create containers to keep items inside. The materials required to make soap were also found in the furnaces excavated, with loom weights also being found that proved that they were mixing soap with wool sheared from sheep in order to create cloth. This meant that those who lived at the location of Tallahassee were able to build an economy in a desert environment and trade with those in other locations, earning money that could be spent on things they needed. The game ends back at the PEF, where the player can test what they have learnt by answering true or false questions. If they get some wrong, then that's okay, as Kathleen Kenyon is there for another tour. Of course, I've left gaps during this presentation, but hopefully this has provided some context for my project and how video games can be a useful platform to teach history. Thank you for watching.